Okay, we're live.
We're live. Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Hall. I'm here today with Rylan Warner and Zach New for our weekly Joseph and Hall immigration update. We, as always, are each going to give a short update on something that's in the news, and then we will be happy to take any questions that come up in the comments. If you're watching this later, you can always tune in at this time on Thursdays and get your questions in there. If you have some more individualized questions, you're always welcome to contact our office and schedule a consultation. So I will, why don't I start with my update?
Sounds good.
I'm going to talk a little bit about a new policy that USCIS announced, and it's for people who have applied for special immigrant juvenile status. So this is for people who are children who have been abandoned or abused by their parents, and it's the way that the process works is generally you need to get a state court to make a finding that the child was abused or neglected by one of their parents, and then either allocate parental rights to the other parent, or it's usually a guardianship if it's a non-parent who's going to basically have parental legal powers over the child. And after that is done, the findings from the state court about the abuse and neglect get sent with a petition to USCIS. And the petition asks for a finding that they are a special immigrant juvenile. Now, the problem is that special immigrant juveniles are, for some reason, shoehorned into the employment base numbers for immigration, and it's a category that for certain countries has become very backlogged. So there can be a number of years before they can, even if they get their special immigrant juvenile designation, they can't use that to apply for their green card until they become current in the visa bulletin that's released by the Department of State. So it's led to a scenario where all these people are applying for, and they're going to qualify for their residency based on this program that's designed for these kids, but they're stuck without the ability to apply for the green card. They don't really have status. They have nothing. And so USCIS this week announced a new policy, and the policy is to consider offering what's called deferred action for people who are special immigrant juvenile applicants. Basically, the way that it's going to work is once that petition is approved by USCIS, it's called an I-360, then they're considered for deferred action. And deferred action doesn't give like a lawful immigration status necessarily, but what it does is it says Department of Homeland Security is not going to pursue deportation of the kid, and they are going to allow them to apply for a work permit while they have deferred action. They announced that it's going to be deferred action grants are going to last for a period of 4 years, and that hopefully should be enough to get for the visa bulletin to become current, and then they can apply for their green card. If not, then they're going to be able to apply to extend the deferred action. It's really a positive announcement to try to cover this gap. Now, there's one problem with the program, of course, and it's that you have to have been approved for the petition. So if that first petition is taking USCIS a long time to decide, then you're not there's no coverage during that gap. There's no protection while that piece is pending. So there's still an issue with a backlog in getting to this point. But it is nice in that it provides some protection and some coverage for these kids, and they should be able to use this program to get out of removal proceedings if they're in removal proceedings, and have some stability, which of course is important to this population of kids who have been abused, neglected, or abandoned by their parents. So overall, a good update, a positive update, and it's always nice to be able to provide something positive in these updates.
Yeah, and I imagine that there's not much to do if you are one of those people that you've submitted your application for it and you're waiting for it to be approved, and maybe it's been taking a really long time. But what is there anything that you could do to try to speed up that process?
Yeah, I mean, so when they announced this program, what they said was they're automatically considering people who have filed that petition, the I-360, and they said there is no need to submit anything else to be considered for this deferred action, the announcement actually says they won't accept anything else. So not only is there no need to file anything else, they're going to reject everything else, at least according to the announcement. So there's nothing further to do. As far as whether it's possible to speed up that, USCIS has their normal expedite procedures, but beyond that, no.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's a step in the right direction. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd rather just full on green card, but deferred action is better than nothing. That's for sure.
Yeah, maybe Zach knows the history of this program, but I don't know why it got shunted into the employment-based categories. Do you know, Zach?
Yeah, it was just because they needed to put the visa numbers somewhere, and the employment-based 4 category was historically underused. So they said, we'll put it here. And then suddenly it just got oversubscribed. And yeah, that's impacted.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to say, well, let's create more visas?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Yeah, it was.
I don't know why they always consider it like a zero-sum game. Like, there's nothing that says that we can't just say, hey, we're authorizing more visas.
That's a slippery slope, Aaron. I mean, who knows when we're gonna stop with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Zach, I think I'll go next if you don't mind. So I wanted to talk about an app. So in relation to my story last week about robot dogs, yes, I'm saying it again, robot dogs. I wanted to look into another use of technology that's been implemented by immigration authorities and something that is kind of experimental. I know that there has previously been kind of a flagship program using this app called SmartLink that I think happened around the Baltimore, Maryland area. Aaron and I were talking about it just before we got on. But I think that since then, this program utilizing an app on a phone has been expanded to include many people along the border, because around 125,000 people that have been released from detention on bond are using an app on their phone to check in with ICE. And they have been required to install this app. The app lets ICE check in on these individuals by they might request a photograph of the person that they take right then and there with the app, and that photograph is then they use facial recognition software on the photograph. I last week mentioned my issues with facial recognition software. It's all over, but they also allow ICE to call people through the app, to set up in-person check-ins, and it also allows ICE to track the locations of these individuals. Supposedly, it only uses the location data when ICE is actually just checking in with them. It's not all the time, but obviously people are worried that it might lead to all-day 24-hour monitoring. Aaron, I think that when you were talking about the flagship program, there was more specific parameters from what I understood of the limits of this app from the articles I was reading today. It basically is just a contact point between ICE and the parolee, and that it doesn't actually require them to be in particular areas. I mean, if they are released to a sponsor in a certain city, they should be in or around that city. But that was the extent of it. And you were saying that maybe you knew some more extensive requirements that they had to follow, at least with the flagship program.
Yeah, so I think this SmartLink app is being ramped up nationwide in general by ICE, but there's like a smaller program for basically targeted at recent entrants. And it's specifically been targeted to recent entrants who have a final destination of Baltimore or Houston. That's the pilot program, and for various reasons. But anyway, that is being touted as an alternative to detention, and this app is part of it. But also there are other requirements that they put on the people in this program, and some of them are strange. I was telling Rylan before that when it was announced, that it was reported that one of the requirements was going to be that the person be in the home between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And, my first thought was, hey, people might need to take their kids to school at 8 a.m. or, they might get work authorization and work or work a night shift or an evening shift. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And also, just why? Why do they care? Why do they care where somebody is? So my understanding is that they've since put in some exemptions, and you can ask to be allowed to take your kid to school, but I just don't understand why they want somebody like on house arrest, basically. But I think for me, with all of these monitoring apps and devices and ankle shackles, things like that, it's often touted as an alternative to detention, and if that's the case, then maybe there are trade-offs that can be considered, and in some ways it might be better than detention. But I don't think we've seen that. I don't think we've seen detention numbers drop commensurate with the use of monitoring. And so instead, what we're seeing is the same companies that make their fortunes profiting off of private detention are now doing it through this kind of mass surveillance of non-citizens. And I think my fear is that they'll just do more and more ramping up of this when it's not necessary. If people are going to go to their court dates anyway, then what's the point of monitoring where they are and making them sign up for this really invasive stuff? And I think for future updates, maybe we should start calling this like Ryland's dystopian technology porn or something. Because it's always like, I always hear your updates, and I'm very disturbed by the future.
Yeah, I'll come up with a theme song, something very dreary and overwhelming. I did have some other things to say about it. I mean, like what you were saying, it is touted as being cheaper than detention. In the story that I was reading today, this app is $4.36 a day to monitor someone, compared to $140 a day to keep someone in detention. But also, as you say, I mean, this app was created by Behavioral Interventionists, Inc., and they are based in Boulder, Colorado, and they are a subsidiary of Geo Group, which is one of those private prison organizations. Geo Group has a facility just up the road from where we work right now. I mean, for them to tout it as an alternative to detention when it is being created by detention companies, I mean, obviously there is a conflict of interest there. And so I think you're right, Aaron, that it's not meant to, or at least their implementation of it is not meant to be a replacement for detention, but as a way to keep tabs on people that they just don't have room for in their detention facilities. Well, we have to do something with them, and I wish we could keep them in our little facility for $140 a day, but at least we'll have some sort of track of them.
So here, we'll move on to Zach's update in a second, but now you've got me all riled up. You do the math from their perspective. So detention numbers, ICE detention numbers might be somewhere between 20,000 and 50,000, depending on the time and what's going on over the course of the last few years. So you do that times $140 a day, and they're doing okay. But then they look at the immigration court backlog, just like we do, and they say, hey, there's 1.6 million cases out there. What if we convinced the agency that really these people should be monitored, that really these people should be checking in, and we get a little taste of that money as well. And then beyond the people in the immigration court backlog, we have people with final orders that are not going to be removed for one reason or another, and they are going to be monitored with these private companies' systems. So my concern is that they're just aiming to convince the agencies and potentially Congress that everybody should be monitored. All the non-citizens should be monitored. Everybody in removal proceedings should be monitored. And there's just not a need for it. So
yeah.
that's my take.
Julie Mao from Just Futures, she was saying it started with people that were in detention facilities. It has already begun to be used on people that were never detained and that are just in regular deportation proceedings. So yeah, it's annoying, scary. Hopefully we can rein this in, but let's move on to you, Zach.
All right. So let me give you, I'm talking about the USCIS contact center. That's their 1-800 customer service line. Notice it's not their customer service line, it's their contact center. There's a reason for that. Just as a little bit of background, the people who answer the phone at the 1-800 number are not immigration agents. They're contractors based out of various contract facilities. It's usually a race to the bottom on which contract facility gets the contract to be the particular phone center. So when you call, and if you're able to get a person, you're initially talking to somebody who doesn't have a lot of immigration training and really is not privy to a whole bunch more information than you would be able to get on your own. So because of that, what you would typically do is be elevated to an actual immigration agent if you had a question that needed that sort of kind of supervisory review. But let me take you back 6 years, I guess, initially to give you some context of where we're at right now. 6 years ago, I would call the 1-800 number. I would say, speak to a representative, and I would get a person on the phone. And I would say, hey, I have this problem. And they would say, okay, let me elevate you to a supervisor. I did. Maybe put on hold, maybe not. And then I would speak to a tier 2 officer and have my problem solved. We're in the ideal situation.
Okay.
Now let's fast forward to present day. I call this number, some robot answers, and I say speak to a representative, and it says no, and then it pretends to type, and then I say no, I really need to speak to a representative, and it says I don't think there's anything I can do to help you, and then it hangs up on me. If you were to yell at it or use some sort of profanity, it might get offended and also hang up on you. Basically what I'm getting at is it's impossible to talk to a real person unless you know some secret magic words to get past the robot. Then once you've gotten past the robot and you've talked to an actual person at this contact center who's not able to answer your question because they have the same information that you do, you'll get a callback window. They're not going to elevate you to a supervisor right away because there's just too many people calling. Sorry. So they'll say, okay, expect a call back from a supervisor. Here's your confirmation number. You should hear something in 20 to 30 days. That's not an exaggeration. 20 to 30 days is what they'll give you. And they can call anytime between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. But also my most recent one, they called me at 6:45 a.m., so that's a damn lie. Anyways, the point of all this is that the USCIS contact center is broken, and it is ridiculously hard to use, and you just cannot get the type of services that you need from the contact center. And some of them are very important. So for example, let's say your green card was expired and you had filed to renew your green card and it urgently needed to travel, but your green card's expired. So you need to get a stamp in your passport showing that you are a lawful permanent resident in order to be able to travel. You need to go and get an info pass appointment at your local field office where they would have an actual immigration officer review your documents and then give you a stamp in your passport saying you're good to go. Very difficult to schedule those now because first off, you have to get past the robot gatekeeper, and then second off, it's a 20 to 30 day callback window that you may miss because it's Saturday at 6:45 a.m. and you're not up and ready to talk about your immigration case at that time. So because of this and a number of other reasons, I've just scratched the surface of our complaints with the USCIS contact center. Congress, in fact, 47 members of Congress wrote a letter to USCIS saying, hey, this is not how this should work. You've changed your mission statement to being much more service-oriented, like it was previous to the Trump administration. And there are all of these problems that have come up at the contact center. Things like paralegals not being able to put service requests in and having to be an actual attorney. Things like this impenetrable robot gatekeeper. In this letter, they even call out USCIS and how big their backlog has grown from fiscal year 2015 to now. They say specifically, like, you're doing a really bad job and your contact center is terrible. So, no real update besides everybody is starting to see that this is a broken system that needs to be fixed. And I am hopeful that this robot gatekeeper will go away, or else we'll see some changes to how the contact center works so that we can actually use it for its intended purpose. Getting people info pass appointments, checking on case statuses, requesting expedites, things that you would be calling USCIS about, and not calling and then hoping that 29 days later you happen to be by your phone and awake when the officer calls. So anyways,
when I'm thinking about their contact center, their customer service, it's kind of all interrelated with the whole agency's failures. Because if you think about, we have clients all the time who are coming to us and they're about to lose their job, or they're about to, because their work authorization is expiring and the auto extension is expiring. So what are they doing? They're calling the USCIS customer service center to request expedites, to say, hey, this is terrible. This is impacting my life. And because there's, tens, hundreds of thousands of people in the same situation with different kinds of applications, of course they're flooded with calls. Of course they can't have helpful people respond to all this. It's because they're not adjudicating cases like they should be. So there's all of these cases are worthy expedites. And if everything's a worthy expedite, then nothing is. So I think it needs to be fixed in conjunction with their adjudication processes in general. So when I'm director of USCIS, that's the plan.
Okay.
And I think Congress agrees, and the members of Congress who wrote this letter, at least, and that's why they are specifically calling them out on, like, hey, you know how your backlog increased 85% over the last 5 years? That's a problem as well. We're talking about the contact center, but keep this one in mind also. You guys are really letting your backlog grow. And interestingly, they didn't blame it just on COVID. They didn't say, over the last 2 years. They said from fiscal year 2015 to now, it's grown this much. So,
they have a lot of competition, but to me, they're truly the worst agency.
Aaron, I think that you're right that these are interrelated issues, and it's probably because they're having an experimental AI make all the decisions for USCIS moving forward. And that's the same person that answers the phone calls. So it's just like, what are you doing? Too much technology. Just calm down. Okay, calm down.
I just love that it pretends to type. That's my favorite. Give me a moment, and then you hear a typing sound, and you're a robot. Don't pretend you're typing.
Needs time to load, Zach. Okay, should we move on to questions? I see we have one.
Yes.
Okay. From Abishkar Corral, they ask, is there any possibility that Go plaintiffs will get a visa in this fiscal year? What do you think about that, Aaron?
Yes. to answer simply, yes, there's a possibility. The order from Judge Mehta says they've got to issue Go plaintiffs 481 visas to Go plaintiffs this fiscal year. That order has been temporarily stayed for a period of 30 days. Will that stay be extended? That means paused. It's been paused. So right now they're not on the hook to produce these visas, but they will be again soon unless it's extended. Will it be extended? I kind of expect that it will. because why would I'm not sure I understand why Judge Mehta would stay the order for 30 days and then say, well, I'm not going to stay it further while the Court of Appeals decides this. But we will see. So yes, there's a chance because that's what the order says. And if it's not stayed anymore, then they're going to have to issue visas. But I am worried that they're going to further delay it until there is a decision from the DC Court of Appeals.
And then we got another question from Suvi Von Hala asking, is DB22 moving forward next week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's DB22 is filed, to be clear. That's the Boujabour case. And the amended complaint will be filed in the coming days. After that, the next step is that we need to get together with government counsel and ask them how they want to handle the production of the administrative record. There are two ways that this could go, and part of it depends on the response from government counsel. One way is if we're satisfied with the schedule that they propose and they're agreeing to an expedited briefing schedule, we may just go straight to summary judgment. That's what we did in Go. And then the first major decision we get on the case will be the final decision. That's the way that it worked in Go. Or there are scenarios where we would decide, you know what, that piece isn't going to go fast enough. And so we would, in that case, decide to move for a preliminary injunction, which would ask for some of the relief that we're seeking in the case as a preliminary matter, and then later it goes to summary judgment. So the particulars about how that's going to go forward, we're not sure yet, because part of it depends on how willing they are, how quickly they're willing and able to produce the administrative record and go to briefing. Long way of saying it's moving forward, and we will have updates likely in the next week or two.
All right, sounds good. Well, that's it for today then.
All right, we look forward to seeing everybody next week for Ryland Warner's Dystopian Corner and the rest of the update, Joseph and Hall. And thank you, Suvi, to you too. We see your comment, and we will see the rest of you next week.